Welcome back to The Globe on SABC News. Now, as reported, South Sudan's have signed a final deal in the Sudanese capital Khartoum on power sharing and security arrangements. For more on this, we are joined in studio by Advocate Sipho Mantula, a researcher at UNISA. Advocate Mantula, thank you so much for joining us on The Globe. Now, what's the main ethnic issue with South Sudan now that it needs addressing? What are the main issues where we see, you touched on the fact that before we came on air, you touched on the fact that this particular deal has not been imposed on the leadership of South Sudan. Just take us through that process.
Thank you very much, Lulu, and evening, Africa. Lulu, you know, the issue of ethnic tribal factors in many conflicts in the continent has been haunting us. It is something that if you look at this conflict from the early 1950s to now in the 2005 Kenya peace agreement, those were the issues. But again, you have this issue around resources. You have the issues around the armed groups, what you can call them irregular armed groups. I'm very wary to call them rebels. And there is this other issue of that Salva Kiir have said that it is better than 2015. This is what he have said yesterday. And this has been inked actually on the 25th of July. When you look at the history of this peace agreement, it was inked on the 25th of July. Come yesterday, it was finalized. Yes, in this time there are no reservations, but there are more challenges of having 5 vice presidents that you must still house, put security, and again deal with the issues of the new ministers. Transitional government, they are talking of 2021. So one can say that what is a challenge is public participatory democracy that has lacked, the refugees, the plight of refugees, the issue around the military groupings that have been spreading around the southern Sudan. But I think another element is the neighbors. One thing that we don't look in any conflict, the neighbors have got interest. Guarantors of this peace deal now, it is the North Sudan, it is Uganda. The AU and the UN are the witnesses.
Now, let's go to the issue of the 5 vice presidents. How's that going to work as a structure? Do they have a plan going forward? And what does it mean in terms of the peace deal holding this time around?
Any legal mind or constitutional lawyer will say that they will first amend their constitution so that they can allocate those powers to the first vice president. Coincidentally, being the exiled Riek Machar, who was here in South Africa. We have never known about his whereabouts. Others have seen him in malls. But what is interesting, it is this woman who should be in that 5 vice president. Others, they are looking at the wife of John Garang. But challenges are that to put these 5 vice presidents, it will have another pressure on the fiscus. They have not been doing well. But the North Sudan, it is smiling because they will be opening the oil pumps. And when you look again, the arrangement has to be done in the sense of delivery, not in the sense of having pacts. And you will remember President Thabo Mbeki did this during the conflict in the DRC, where it was 1+4. Coincidentally, Bemba is back in
the DRC,
in Congo once more.
Now, you touch on the issue of foreign influence. South Sudan, are they the victim of foreign influence? You mentioned Sudan and you mentioned Uganda. Earlier on, as we were chatting, you mentioned the US. Correct. So there's a lot of foreign entities or foreign hands in this pot of South Sudan. Just take us through exactly what is happening and how it benefits all these influences in South Sudan.
You know, in 2015, I was in Addis, and I will urge you to read that report from the Institute of Security Studies. It was around the cost of the war in the South Sudan. Who are these hidden hands behind this conflict. When you look at the Troika, USA, UK, Norway have been very persistent at the UN Security Council by pushing sanctions. At the same time, USA in the 2013 peace deal and Norway, they were the main backers. You look at al-Bashir, he has been on the side of Riek Machar. You look at Uhuru Kenyatta, who has been neutral. You look at the youngest president of Ethiopia, Abiy Ahmed, he has been influential. You look at the president of Djibouti, Somalia. So when you look at the South Sudan, it is a very sad story in the sense that being the newly born state, you have foreign influences having a capitalistic mind, not to assist, but to loot and even unjustly enrich their national interest. So what is needed here, it is IGAD, it is the AU, because I think what is key, it is for the issues even around corruption. Post-referendum 2011, some of us when we were there, when we have left the Southern Sudan, we said that economic revival is key. The foreign powers, they can come, invest. China, it is one of the biggest contributors there. And yes, we have the BRICS countries. South Africa, we have played a critical role in the Southern Sudan peace agreement. And I think that's why we need this people-to-people contact. We need even our African communities, business community, to be the one assisting this new peace deal, rather than focusing on the Western powers. Because Western powers, like I've said, they've been the meddlers. We have the meddlers, we have the mediators. And I think they've not been honest mediators, because mediators in the African context have to stay within community, have to be clear, don't deal with contracts and paydiums, don't even have to rush for the peace agreement. Hence I say to you, this has been a very mammoth marathon since it has started in Kenya, Ethiopia, Mauritania, back to the security compound of al-Bashir.
Do you think this time around there's trust between the two main leaders, Salva Kiir and Riek Machar?
You know, when I saw their images in Addis in June, Mauritania, wherever there were cameras on them, there was this, one can say, a willingness. And this is very good because they are what we can term the godfathers of the peace agreement. Others are saying, no, but the real godfathers is Museveni and General Bashir. But I say that they have found that reconciliatory mood and motion, and they will owe this to the people of the Southern Sudan.
How do the people of South Sudan feel at this point in time in terms of the emotions? They've been through this process before, yes. And now again there's, as you say, an inflated sort of government now that's going to be in play. Do you think the people of Sudan are comfortable right now, and they believe that this time around things are going to work out for their country?
I think they have what we call mixed emotions, reactions and hope, but at the same time they are looking at the commitment from the leaders, and that those guarantors of the peace deal, the North Sudan, Uganda, will support them economically, and the AU and the IGAD have a critical role to build those peace dividends and profits. But again, you need transitional justice mechanism. Whatever happened from 2015 to 2018, there must be justice for those people who have lost their families. There must be reparation. So one cannot just be very cozy and say this is a peace deal of the big men and the leaders. But what about justice to the people? So one can say the communities will expect economic growth. They will expect the silencing of guns, because I think the guns has been sounding in that country for more than 60 years. Like I said, it's a conflict that has been a very long conflict from 1956 until today, during the time of John Garang. And you will imagine, this is the country that has got natural resources. There is oil, there is the Nile River, there is water, there is mining, there is even food. So this is a country that needs to be supported. And I think South Africa too has a critical role academics too have to write about it and do an intervention.
Now, in terms of the people of Sudan and the repatriation or people going back home, currently they're amongst the biggest numbers of refugees all over the continent, and especially in Uganda. Now, looking at what needs to be done, do you think, looking at the people of the refugees and the people of South Sudan and the armies, and you mentioned earlier that you don't want to call them rebels, the armies of the leaders currently, are they willing to put down their arms? Because it's very easy for leaders to decide and that a blanket decision to say, this is what we're going to do, this is the route that we're taking, but get resistance from their armies.
No,
how is this going to work?
What I can tell you, normally the media, you are not privy to this information. In a peace deal and agreement, security and military arrangement, it is key, it is core. So you have what we call the disarmament and the reintegration of what you will call the rogue element within the Sudan People's Liberation Army. Now, there is going to be a single army. This is what they will fight for. You have talked about the critical issue of refugees. The UN and the AU have to take that bull by the horn, give access to water and food, because there was the issue of shortage of food in those refugee camps. So there is an immediate need to work around refugees to be reintegrated back into the villages. You need to open the roads, you need infrastructure, services like water and sanitation. But these leaders, as you have said, they have to conform and comply with the peace agreement so that it doesn't become a fruitless and a futile exercise. And like you have said, the military code, that role of the armed forces, they have to be accountable, and you need that link of the civilian and the military relation, and it must be African-centered.
In terms of time frames, we've seen, yes, at this point in time, it's different this year, as you mentioned, that, the agreement, there isn't as much hostility, and there seems to be some peace flowing through the air between the leaders. Is this going to last? Should we be positive about it?
I think we should be positive, but at the same time we should be cautious and take positive observation. They've given themselves 6 months, and there is a 3-year transitional government, and I think that's where we have to be optimistic, but we have to always encourage the element of transitional justice, peace, reconciliation, and bring sanity and economic revival in the southern Sudan so that John Garang can be happy where he is. Coincidentally, 2015, it was 27 August. 2018 is the 5th of August. So they have this August
There's a history
feeling.
with August,
there is this August feeling with the people of the southern Sudan. So some of us, we are very positive, but we are not giving up. We are living up.
Advocate Mantula, thank you so much for joining us. We'll leave it there for now. That was political analyst, Advocate Sipho Mantula, a researcher at UNISA.